I would say not just young coaches, but any coach is wise to try to tap into the wisdom, experience, and expertise of a Ryan Millar, of a Taylor Sander, of a Matt Anderson, of a Jordan Larson, of a Faluka Akinradewo. You know, the players who have accumulated this set of, who've built this expertise and have worked really hard to accomplish that. Why not tap into that knowledge and let them feel like they can have more of an impact and more ownership on it too, that they can make more of a contribution, the players. And it just helps them in their buy-in. Like, if my feedback has been solicited, asked for from a coach, and I see that one or two of my ideas are being implemented, or some of my thoughts are being implemented into our training plan, that's really empowering because it is really important. The players play a huge role. At some point, they have to take, much like you all did in 2008, you have to take command of a lot of this process. You're the ones making the on-the-court, real-time, live reads and decisions. And so it can't be coach-driven. It has to be very much player-driven. The coach doesn't get to play it for you. We players have to be a big driving force in that.
Yeah, totally agree. You know, another thing just about Italy is you talked about learning the language, and I had a funny story. So my first year I played in Italy, I actually played with Reed, and I played with George Romain. So we had 3 Americans on the same team, which was phenomenal. We were all young players. You know, it was our kind of.
Were you all 3 allowed to be on the court at the same time? Because often
because at that time you could have 4 foreigners on the court at the same time. So we had 3 Americans, and then we had a Finnish guy who spoke perfect English as well. And a lot of our Italian guys all spoke really good English. And so we would rarely ever speak Italian. So I didn't learn I could go to a restaurant and order. That was pretty much it.
Yeah.
Then my second year, everything blew up. I went to a different team. And on that team, very few people, if any, I'm trying to remember, spoke really good English. And our coach only wanted to speak Italian. And so there I was thinking, okay, I got to figure this out a little bit. And to even make it worse, we were actually sponsored by a local television program where after our matches, they would invite the players to come onto the program and field questions from the fans. And so the first time I went on, it was pretty early in the season. And you know, I'm on the stage and I'm in the studio and the lights are just blaring. I'm just sweating because I'm super nervous because I don't know Italian that well. And I'm getting these people calling in, and I can barely hear them because the audio is horrible. And they're asking me these questions, and I'm just like, I tried to do the best I could. And it was funny. I went back to practice the next day, and all my guys were like, "Hey, so what did you think of the show last night?" And I go, I don't know. I mean, I did as well as I could. And they just started laughing because they're like, "You were terrible." Like, people would ask you a question, and you would answer with like a totally different question. I'm like, hey, whatever. But it was at that point when I'm like, okay, I got to start buying the CDs and learning the verbs. And I got the dictionary. And that was when I really kind of dug in and was like, okay, I got to figure this out. And that's when I learned the most that year.
And isn't it interesting that you were probably more nervous doing that interview than you were playing any match for that team that season, because you're not in your comfort zone. But that's exactly how you learn. Like, you'll never forget that interview. I'll never forget ones I did where I just completely bungled it. But being a learner, and this is huge for anybody listening to your podcast or just interested in leading a more successful life, but you have to be willing to dive in and, like you did, like I did, just embarrass yourself. If you let the fear of embarrassment, if you had let that guide you to refusing to do that interview and just shutting down, you never would have learned Italian. Yeah. And so we have to get beyond that. That's a huge part of being a learner, is being willing to look stupid as a beginner, being okay and living with that. Yeah. The people who learn languages, especially as adults, when it's more difficult to do. It's
Mhm.
far easier to learn it when you're 2 years old and you grow up with it. But when you're learning
Right.
it as an adult, you have to, the people who learn it do it. They don't just think it and never say it. They might learn to understand pretty well, but they're never, the people who learn to speak new languages as an adult are just dive in, get dirty, say the wrong thing a lot, ask for feedback. I carried around a English, Italian translation dictionary with me everywhere. I told my
Yeah.
teammates, when I conjugate a verb wrong, tell me, like, I want to learn how uh,
Yeah.
to say the right tense for the right person, first person, second, third, those kinds of things. And so I made, zillions of mistakes, but it made me, um, we both got the chance to learn a new language. Am I a perfect speaker? By no means. Can I do it conversationally? I can, and I love that I got to do that. It honed just my general learning skills, and being okay with that discomfort is a
Yeah.
huge part of being a better learner. If you shut down with that discomfort, with that potential embarrassment, you're just going to slow down, retard your learning process tremendously. And I wouldn't wish that on anyone.
Yeah. You know, it makes me think. I watched a documentary once about how katana samurai sword blades are made. And it made me think a little bit about this, and like how everything that I've done over the course of my life, my career, whatever it ends up being, was really done through failure, try again, failure, try again, success, try again, failure, success. And the way these blades are made is just phenomenal to see, because they're just constantly beating on the metal. And the guy, the master who's making these blades, was like, when you think the sword is ready, you're about a quarter of the way through.
Ooh, wow.
And then he's just beating on it again, and he's putting it in the hot fire, and he's heating it up, and then he's sticking it into the cold water, and he's beating it and beating it. And eventually he gets to a point where he feels like it's the right strength. And the way that they would test it is they put the blade up, and then they would take a sharpshooter and he would shoot at the blade, and you'd see it in super slow-mo. The bullet would head for the blade, and as soon as it would hit it, it would just split, and the blade wouldn't even move. But you'd
Oh,
see the
wow.
bullet shoot against the walls. And I was just like, man, that's kind of how it is. It's trial, error, figure it out. And eventually you're at a point where you feel pretty good. And then even at that point, you're still learning, right? I mean, you've had the career that you've had. You're now in a coaching role. I mean, I'm sure you're learning every single day, which makes me kind of transition there. What have you enjoyed most about just your experience coaching the women's national team? And what would you say is at the top of your head in regards to what you're experiencing right now with the team?
I guess two things. Number one, it is a huge honor and privilege to get to work with this special group of women. They're such great role models for young girls and boys across the country. I wish more people knew about them, but they're so intelligent, hardworking, dedicated, sacrificing, all the things that they do that people can't see or know that go into trying to become masters at
Yeah.
volleyball. We're all pursuing mastery. So number one, it's always great to, it's a special time to get to work with so many people, so many good people dedicated to team mastery and to accomplish things that this team and this program have never done. Still await for history to be made, like to win an Olympic gold medal for the women's
Right.
national team program. And the other is that I got to play high-level volleyball for probably about 30 years, world-class volleyball, either sand or indoors, sometimes both in the same year. But when my career wound down when I was 46, around that time is when I got my coaching start. And coaching is so different than playing, and so it has while it's been very difficult, it's also been, I don't know, it's allowed me to continue to be involved in this game that I'm so passionate about, so in love with, on a different level, and to get to start from the basics and be a beginner again, in the sense of a beginner coach. When I first got into coaching to coach our boys in high school, first thing I did was just figured, all right, I know a lot about this game. I've played it for a really long time, have been a part of a lot of teams with tremendous success, but I got to just start at the beginning. So I signed up for a coaching clinic with Marv Dunphy, basically like coaching 101, and, you know, sat in the front row and took all the notes I could, and just it's given me an opportunity to continue igniting and firing my passion on a different side, knowing that I got a late start in coaching based on a long playing career, and also knowing that in general I'm swimming against the tide. In general, the norm is that people who've had a lot of success in team sports as players don't tend to make the best coaches. Often the best coaches are the ones who didn't start a lot, sat on the bench and studied the game, they were like a player coach. They picked the coaches and the assistant coaches' brains more in trying to figure out how to be best for their team and understand the principles of why we're training this way, what we're doing, why we're running these systems, all those kinds of things. So the people who tend to make really good coaches tend not to have had a lot of success. So knowing that I'm swimming against that tide and I got a late start is just, that realization is really good for me. I know that every day I have to fight hard to try to earn the right to continue doing what I'm doing, and fight hard to learn and be better than I was as a coach this week when it comes to next week, next month, next year. And that's also important because, as I mentioned, our program hasn't won an Olympic gold medal yet. So there are some strong ways in which we can all say we are not there yet. We have not yet arrived. We're still hungering for these really special things that have been like the Olympics and what you and your teammates did. And I did with my teammates twice, winning an Olympic gold medal. So the women's side wants to do that too. And we've had a huge amount of great players and great coaches come before us who weren't able to make that happen. So we stand on their work, great work, and we still have more to do. So I have to be willing to be a model and to say, look, if we all have to get better, I do too, because we do all. Our program has not arrived. It's incumbent. It's imperative for each of us to be better next year than we are right now in significant ways if we want to do what we've never done before at the Tokyo Olympics.
Yeah. You know, I'm curious at your perspective on this question, because I've had this conversation with a lot of people, and I think I have an idea, but I don't know if it's the right idea. So I'm curious so we've got, and I could be wrong on the total number, we've got 27 Division I men's programs. We've got 315 something Division I women's college programs.
Yeah, maybe more like 340. Yeah,
it could be. We've got, the men have won 3 gold medals and the women have yet to win a gold medal. And so the thought process around that, for a lot of people that maybe don't know the ins and outs of why, they would think, well, you've got this abundance of talent on the women's side and this small little group of talent on the men's side, yet you could argue that we've been more successful internationally on the men's side than the women's side, if you look at it from a gold medal count, for sure. Why, in your perspective, do you feel like the women have yet to cross that threshold and reach the top from the Olympic standpoint?
I think a couple reasons, or a few reasons. Number one, we've had some chances. We've had some
Yeah.
great chances. We had a great chance working our way all the way to the final in London,
Yeah.
and just didn't perform well enough in that match. But we had barely lost any matches for a year, even
Yeah.
against Brazil. And so Brazil threw a storm at us that we were unable to respond to. We had a great chance to win in Rio almost 4 years ago now, but came up a little short in one match against Serbia, 15-13 in the fifth game. An absolute soul crusher of a loss, but our team responded tremendously to come back strong and win the bronze medal.
Yeah.
But we were certainly capable of winning that. So it's not that we haven't been capable. And there have been other Olympics. The USA women have won 3 silvers and 2 bronzes in the 11 Olympics that
Yeah, I
they've
was going to say in 2008,
competed
it
in.
was
So
almost the same
it's
thing.
not that we haven't pressed for
Right.
it. But there are other small headwinds that add up to making it a little more difficult for the women. One of them is the fact that, unlike the men, in college volleyball, even though the men have a tiny talent pool, in college they're playing the exact same game they play at the international level. They play with very few substitutions, and they're wise to do so. 6 substitutions for each set that goes to 25 points. If the men went to what the women did and offered 15 substitutions, I think it would be the death of men's international volleyball. The men would not be able to have a Taylor Sander come straight off the college, off his last college season in May, and then help lead USA to a World League title and an MVP recognition in the process. Players, especially as outside hitters and as opposites, come out light years ahead in terms of being more prepared for what comes next on the men's side than on the women's side. In women's volleyball, with 15 substitutions, most outside hitters, no matter how good they are, most are halftime outside hitters. They either play the front row and do a lot of hitting and blocking, or they only play the back row, serving, defending. And when they're that kind of back row player, they don't do much in the way of attacking from the back line, which is a critical element in both men's and women's volleyball. So there's 2 positions that really hurts: outside hitters and opposites. Very few people come out of college ready to do well at the next level as an outside hitter or an opposite. If you're a female player, because so few players play a full-time game of outside hitter volleyball and master the whole skill set, or become so proficient that they can make that leap to the next level. Matt Anderson, another example on the men's side. He didn't even play his senior season. He was so good and so prepared for life after college that he went to play in Korea, got a nice big contract there, but immediately started having an impact on the USA men's program. Great. I think that's awesome. That's much less possible on the women's side. So that's one factor. Another factor is that, for example, our women's basketball team at the Olympics has utterly dominated. The other teams around the world are getting better, but the rest of the world is coming to basketball late in the game. They're coming to soccer late in the game. So the headwind hasn't been as strong for basketball, soccer, some of those other ones, as it has for volleyball, where since the 50s and 60s, Japan has been hardcore about women's volleyball. It's been and in China and other countries, it's like the premier women's team sport, way above basketball, way above soccer. Anybody who's anybody has gone into volleyball. It's that popular in that many parts of the world. And so it's been the US that's been playing catch up in some ways. In the 60s and 70s, the US, as we were on the men's side, the US was way behind on the women's side too. We have caught up in many ways, and we are and have been one of the most successful teams. We've won, I would have to add it up, but we've got to be one of the top 3 countries on the women's side in terms of total medal count when you combine the big 3: Olympics, World Championships, World Cup, but very few. Only 1 medal ever for the women, and that was the 2014 World Championships. Tremendous accomplishment for us, but we're hungry for more. It doesn't mean it's impossible. It just means it's a little more difficult from a combination of factors. And we have to be our best when our best is needed. And so we fell a little short in London. We weren't quite good enough to, one small factor is it certainly didn't help our cause to lose the best middle in the world for one crucial match. The only loss that we had in Rio, when we didn't get to have Feluca's services beyond the first set. So there's a combination of factors there. We're certainly capable of it. We've got a lot of work to do, and that's what we're hungry for. But those would be some of the explanations. And a big one is the differences in substitution rules in college. And thank God for the men that they don't go to that same system, because that would really hurt the men and their ability to perform at the very high levels that they continue to do so with a very tiny talent pool.
I agree with everything you just stated. It was that's in large part what I tell people as well. So I think you're spot on there. I think another factor that I also talk about is that oftentimes you've got this group of girls that have all played at different places. And so when you pull them together on the national team, they've got potentially you've got 15 different girls that have played 4 years of 15 different systems. Whereas on the guy side, you've got a number of players that have played together in college. And generally on the men's side, you've got a system of play that is fairly in alignment with all the different programs. There's not 1 or 2 or 3 programs that really play a different system. So when you come to the national team, the system of play is not very different than what you just experienced when you played in college, because that group of coaches is pretty tight. They all know each other. They all talk about the game. And I see it a little bit differently on the women's side. You've got coaching staffs in the NCAA that potentially have different philosophies on how the game is supposed to be played. Then they come to you, the national team, and you're trying to corral this group of women together and play a USA volleyball system that potentially takes a little time to align around as well.
I think you're accurate? Right. That's something that is another factor that I didn't touch on, but you're exactly right. In the men's side, because it's such a small universe, there's a ton of collaboration.
Yeah.
The coaches, even if they're rivals, they collaborate a lot. They talk to each other. I mean, they're out to beat each other in the course of the season, but they know we got to be in this together to keep the level high, to keep men's volleyball alive as a college sport, as an interscholastic, fully varsity college sport. So they know that they have to be together and cooperate and collaborate and agree on, they generally can more easily find agreement on what's best for our game. We all want to keep this game thriving. And so you see that in terms of maybe rivals in college. That coach from one will gladly consult and help or become a part of the coaching staff of somebody from another college. When it comes to working with USA, they all are happy to work with USA together. But you're right. When you have a much bigger universe on the women's side, there are many, many different philosophies, different styles, different principles, and it's far more diverse. The men get to, because it's smaller, when you played, you basically played anybody who was anybody. You played all the other good players and all the other good teams. That's impossible to do on the women's side because it's just so spread out among the Power Five conferences. Some great player might not even see or compete against a great player from a top school in a different conference unless they meet each other late in the NCAA tournament. Meanwhile, the men are playing each other. Probably every good player is playing every other good player at least once, if not twice, in the season. So they know each other better. There's more familiarity, and so for lots of reasons, that collaboration is a critical element for the men, and happens less so with the women, understandably, because with 340 plus programs, it's just hard to think that everybody's going to be in as much alignment or that there will be as much collaboration.
Yeah. All right, so we've got a couple minutes left, and I want to do like some rapid fire questions. These are ideally, if you can, these are like 1, 2, 3 word questions.
Okay.
All right. Name a movie where you remember tearing up.
It's a Wonderful Life every year.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. That's my favorite Christmas movie, by the way.
Favorite Christmas, and just one of my all-time favorites.
In general.
Period. What a great story.
Message. Yeah. Dream vacation. Where are you going?
Dream vacation, camping somewhere in one of the great national parks in Utah, or going and hanging out for a few days on the beach in Maui.
Nice. If you never got into volleyball, what would you be doing right now?
I would probably have gone on into medicine. My dad was a doctor. I was going to follow his path. And then we won the Olympics, and all of a sudden there were new opportunities for volleyball. And 35 years later, I'm still doing this thing.
Good choice. What's your greatest achievement in the sport?
You broke up for a second.
What's your greatest achievement in the sport?
I don't know if I can pinpoint one, but certainly the gold medals I got to be a part of with the Olympics, playing indoors beach, really special, and winning a world championships as the coach of our amazing USA women is another big one.
Yeah. What's the trait you most dislike about yourself?
The trait I most dislike about myself, maybe a couple of. Sometimes I can get too intense, and sometimes I like to be hyper organized and plan a lot, and that's driving me nuts right now. I'm really uncomfortable in this very uncertain time because I just can't plan, and I want to. 15 months and the Olympics are coming.
How about the trait you most dislike in others?
I love it when people are open to asking questions. And I try to do this a lot. I don't know, preface it like, I could be wrong, or here's what I think, but I'd certainly love to hear your opinion. And so I cherish that when that happens, and maybe that's harder when it doesn't.
Yeah. Okay. Here's the question. You've got to pick your team, and we'll start indoor first because I'm curious at who you pick on the beach too. So who's on your team? Let's go U.S. players only. And there's no right answer here, of course, and it's based on your perspective. But who's on the court for you, U.S. players? Who are you putting on the court with you? And it can be from now and, well, I mean, let's stick, since you're a male, let's stick on the male side.
So you're asking me to pick any player from any period,
any era,
and assume that player is in his prime.
Right. Each player is in their prime.
Well, I got to start with Steve Timmons. I don't know where he's going to play. I'm going to have to leave so many people out who are
That's why I preface it. There's no right answer here.
Incredible players. I got to put Pat Powers in there. certainly Matt Anderson has done some amazing things. I
Very big
gotta
team right
throw
now.
Reed in there and how
Yeah,
good he
Reed would
was
be
for so
good.
long. Thinking of middles, I'm gonna put you in there.
Four. Two left.
I gotta pick a bro. I guess Eric showed you, just because we didn't even have bros back in our day. So all right, I probably got some kind of team together there.
You're not putting yourself in there, or you are?
I'll be a backup in there. I could fit in there somewhere, but did I put a couple of outsides? Let's see.
Yeah, you got Reed. You got Matt Anderson could play on the outside if you wanted him to.
Taylor's awfully good now.
Yeah, Taylor would be good.
Yeah.
You and Reed on the outside.
Like me,
you
Bob
and Reed on the outside would be
lots of great players.
Okay, so you're in the best shape of your life, and you get to pick anyone in their best shape of their life. Who are you playing with on the beach? And it's I know it's tough because the games have changed a little bit. Let's say it's today's rules, and you're in your best shape of your life. Who are you picking?
Wow. Well, Phil Dahlhauser.
You go with Phil. That guy.
Anybody who played more of an all-around game and needs somebody to be utterly dominant at the net as a blocker. If I need to pick one teammate to carry that huge load, Phil has probably done that better than just about anybody in history, American or non-American.
Yeah. Well,
even though I never played with him, and I did play with many of the all-time greats. St. John Smith, got to play a little with Mike Dodd, even a little with Tim Hovland, and then a long time with Kent. And so, if I had to pick a teammate that I played a lot with, had a lot of success with, Kent is certainly up there. And then Adam Johnson, had a ton of fun late in my career playing with Mike Lambert. He was awesome.
Yeah.
And Kevin Wong. So got to play with a lot of the greats who've ever come.
That's awesome. Karch, you're great, man. I appreciate you taking time. This was awesome. Just picking your brain, talking stories. It's what this is all about. I appreciate you taking the time. So thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And I wish you great luck with this. And everybody out there, stay well. And let's get back to business soon here.
Good luck. 2021, Tokyo.
Thank you. We'll never say no to some of that.
No, not at all. Take care.
Thanks.